Good morning, viewers, and welcome to another edition of the Economy and Politics Show. Today, Tuesday, October 27, 2020. We continue our conversations around the experience of last week, the carnage and the destruction across the country that followed the national protests on the brutality of the police force in Nigeria and the need for reforms. Today, we'll be looking at the impact of the October 2020 violence on the Nigerian business environment and the economy. How has it impacted the business environment and economy? That will be our focus today, and we have joining us the Director-General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Mudashiru Yusuf. Nice to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And good morning.
Good morning. Let's quickly look at the fact that during the protests against police force brutality and excesses, particularly the activities of the police formation, now disbanded Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry brought out a report that the economy lost about 700 billion naira. Now juxtapose that with the current development, the last week experience from the Lekki Toll Plaza incident down to the violence that was unleashed in Lagos and across the country. Do you have additional updates on the impact it has had in terms of what the economy has lost so far?
Yes, obviously things have changed. The impact has been much worse than what it was at that time. But first of all, let me empathize with the families of those who lost their loved ones, be they part of the protesters or even security agencies. We empathize with them. We also empathize with members of the business community that lost their very valuable assets, inventories, their stock and all of that, even their properties. We empathize with the Lagos State government as well over the carnage, the arson, and the destruction of public properties. So having said that, I think that before the looting, the plundering, the arson, the economy had suffered from the almost 2 weeks of the protest. Because to the extent that movements became difficult, major roads were blocked, and there were progressively indications of breakdown of law and order, because the security men or the security operative didn't do quite much to stop, the deterioration of the situation, and the thing was extending to other parts of the country. Then we had this looting, this destruction of properties and all of that. So the estimate in terms of impact has gone much bigger, both at the micro and at the macro level. When I say micro, I mean the impact on individual businesses. When I say macro, I'm talking about the impact on the economy generally. So the impact has been much more. If you must estimate, you should be estimating between 1.3 to 1.5 trillion in terms of the impacts that it has had and in terms of the losses that we have suffered as a result of this incident. And of course, these things, the shock will last for some time. The perception will also linger for some time. And even going forward between the short to medium term, it will still affect investors' perception about this environment. Investors that were originally thinking of coming to invest may now begin to rethink their decision to invest, whether they are domestic investors or they are foreign investors, particularly when you talk about investing long term. The signal that this incident has sent to investors, whether domestic or foreign, is a very, very bad one. It's a very unfortunate one. And that is what it is.
Now, Dr. Yusuf, when you look at the impact, you've mentioned investor perception. NASIMA also has raised that concern too, that Nigeria's investor friendliness is being challenged by this recent carnage. What would you have to say about how in terms of investor friendliness, we can regain that confidence in steps that can be taken at this point, because we know that one of the big avenues for us for financing and liquidity is investments, foreign direct investments, foreign portfolio investments, and even what we get from diaspora remittances?
Well, the thing to do is to ensure that we commit to building confidence, just as you said. And we can commit to that first by ensuring that the businesses that were affected come back alive as quickly as possible. Because investors relate more with what they see, with what they experience, than with what the government say or with what officials say. So it is the experience of those who are operating on the ground. How quickly are we able to support them? Because they need support. Whether we like it or not, they need support. Because some of them have been brought completely down. Some of them are indebted to the banks and all of that. So we need to support them, and the support can come from either the state government, although the state government also is a victim of this, the federal government, the corporate community, and particularly the Nigerian banking system, for those of them that are indebted to the banks. So we need all this support. And when we are talking about giving them support, it's not so much about giving them additional loan or something. I think we should be looking more at a grant that will help them come back to their feet. If we're able to do that, and if we're able to do that very quickly, I think that will send some very good signals that, okay, we had this thing, but the economy was able to get back very quickly. The victims were supported to come back very quickly. So that is one major thing that we need to do. We also need to ensure that we secure this environment very well. Because the damage and the destruction and the arson shouldn't have been this much if we had a very good and prompt response by the security agencies. Because for almost 48 hours, these characters had a field day. Nobody challenged them. They were burning and looting freely. And because that was happening, it provided an incentive for people who ordinarily would not have joined them across the country. So it inflamed the situation. It led to a very fast deterioration of the situation. Because the security agency practically went to sleep. You couldn't find them, whether the police, whether the military, for almost 48 hours. The agencies responded. They responded after a lot of damage had been done. So the security presence, the visibility of the security agencies is very important to deal with this kind of things. Because that visibility alone will go a long way. Not all the people who are looting are ardent criminals, but when they saw that there are no consequences, more and more people were joining, and the momentum became bigger, almost to the point that it was difficult for the security agencies to manage it. So the security presence is very important. Then the pronouncement from the authorities as to what they are doing to calm the situation, and the engagement with the state. Because stakeholder engagement is also very critical in all of this. We engage with people who initially were protesting. We engage with all the critical stakeholders in the society, to build confidence, to improve communication between the government and the governed. So these are the things I think we can do to ensure that we quickly regain some confidence about this economy and attract investors, whether they are domestic, whether they are foreign. Some of these things can send the right kind of signals that can inspire a much bigger confidence than we have now.
So in terms of taking stock and looking at the business community, let's say the LCCI Have you been able to get an audit or internal review of how it has impacted your members, and then of course other chambers in the country like NASIMA and the trade chambers, bilateral trade chambers?
Well, we're in the process of doing that. We are just coming out from the shock of this attacks and plundering and looting. So we are reaching out to our members to do a kind of survey to know how these things have impacted them. But some of these impacts are also very obvious. You can see that a lot of people have lost their stock and inventory. A lot of them have lost their assets. Some of them have lost their buildings. A lot of employees will be losing their jobs. So these are the dimensions of, and then of course the insurance companies, at least for those of them that had insurance, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the insurance industry, because this is the probability that this was going to happen was very low. So I don't imagine that the insurance industry will have charged any very big premium for burglary and fire and all of that. But here we are, so it's going to impose a lot of burden on the insurance industry as well. I hope they have the capacity to respond to the demand for claims. So these are some of the things that has happened. Many of them will have to, and some of them are indebted to the banks, so they have to struggle to have a negotiation with the banks to see what kind of concession the banks can give. So this is a major setback for many businesses, and this, of course, is obvious. And the shock of this experience will also take some time for people to recover from, particularly those who are victims. And those who are not victims, there's a lot of anxiety in the air, because it could have happened to anybody.
Yeah.
So the psychological environment is also an issue for everyone. Yeah.
Doctor, like you said, states carrying out stakeholders forum. We've seen in Imo State, the Governor Hope Uzodinma has done a stakeholders forum. We've seen the Governor of Akwa Ibom, Udom Emmanuel, address the state and sue for peace. Governor Sanwo-Olu has been very busy too, engaging and assessing the impact. And Kwara State Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak just yesterday announced the release of 500 million naira to support businesses and various concerns affected by the carnage and destruction. But what additional steps can fiscal and monetary policy makers bring to the fore? Some analysts were thinking that we could take a bold step, federal government through Finance Ministry, Central Bank of Nigeria, working with the states to roll out a 100 or 150 billion naira support plan for states affected businesses, and maybe we can scale it up from there. But what steps can be taken from the fiscal and monetary policy side to really support businesses to come through this? Because analysts are really saying that we're going to feel the impact of this on the economy. It's going to really come strong on the economy in terms of the adverse impact.
Well, from the fiscal side, unfortunately, we don't have much fiscal space to deal with things like this. But what I expect is that, or what I wish or desire, is for the federal government to support the Lagos State government in particular, to rebuild some of the assets and the properties that were destroyed. This is important because this is the commercial capital of this country. This is the commercial hub of the West African sub-region. We should not have the level of damage that we have seen continuing, or the threat of it continuing. So we need to support the Lagos State government to rebuild the state in terms of infrastructure and facilities that have been damaged. Then for investors that have suffered losses, from the fiscal and monetary side, my inclination would be to solicit more for grants rather than loan. Because if you take a loan, you still have to repay. And some of them already have existing loan, and we don't know the disposition of the bank to process. So we should be looking for more support in form of grants, depending on, there are proven, cases or evidence of the scale of the damage that has been done. Because there has to be also a proper assessment and a proper data gathering on the victims, and the extent of damage. So we could also have maybe interest-free loans that can be provided for some of them if they wish. But I will wish that we have more of grants than loan, given the magnitude of the shock that has taken place. So basically, I think those are the things, I think, both from the monetary and fiscal side, and from the government side, those are the things that I think they need. What they need is money to get their businesses back on ground, money to rebuild their businesses. And this money doesn't necessarily have to be in form of credits. To be better if you have a large component of it to be in form of grants that to be given to them.
In terms of the economy, in terms of sectors, I know that manufacturing has been really trying to get its feet this year. Will this further dampen the prospects for manufacturing as the year wraps up? From the petroleum side, the downstream, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation said due to the protests, like you said, first 2 weeks and escalated violence, we may see distribution challenges, which already means that we may be seeing fuel queues that has been a thing of history in the past years, returning back. Which other sectors do you think will be really affected that we must watch out for in terms of the gradual recovery, considering the impact of the carnage and on the federal and state economy?
Well, the nature of this incident is such that the impact will be systemic. It will, apart from the micro impact, that is the individual business or enterprise impact on businesses, that for specific businesses, there is also a macroeconomic effect arising first from the fact that there will be reluctance among investors to invest, because getting the economy back to its feet is about investment. And investment is about confidence. Confidence is also about expectation. So across all sectors, this will affect investment. So it's going to affect everybody. And when we have a situation where investment is affected, it has a way of also leading to contraction in the economy. Now, the economy, as a result of COVID, already suffered a contraction in the second quarter. Very likely and most probably will have a contraction in the third quarter, which will bring the economy into recession effectively. Then the fourth quarter, given what has happened with this incident, we're also likely to see a perpetuation of the contraction. So we're likely to see a fairly prolonged recession. And when you have a recession, no matter what sector you are, you will be affected, because we are talking about a general contraction in the economy. We are talking about cash flow. We are talking about income. We are talking about employment. We are talking about purchasing power. So these things have an effect that is systemic. Of course, the impact may vary from sector to sector, but in matters like this, there is no sector that will be immune from it. Those who are immediately impacted in this are those who are maybe customer-facing, public-facing, which is the retail sector. They are the ones that interface directly with customers. So that is why it is easy for them, to be the target, because they are very visible, they are on the road and all of that. There isn't so much impact on factories, because factories are located in some fairly remote locations. I can't go to a factory and start to put the machines and all of that. So those who are in the first line of attack, as it were, are the retail businesses. But of course, it's a chain. If the retail is not doing well, the manufacturing cannot do well, because it's the retail, that generates the cash flow for those who are producing. So it's a system-wide impact. And the earlier we do all that we need to do by inspiring confidence in the system, the better. And more importantly, the MSMEs. Because when you talk about restoring confidence, when you talk about generating employment and all of that, you have more impact if the MSMEs are doing well. By the estimate of the National Bureau of Statistics, we have over 40 million MSMEs. You can imagine if we're able to get even 5 of them to create one job. You can imagine how many million jobs we'll have created, which will normally surpass all the current initiatives of government, either empower, data money, and all of that. So creating the environment for small businesses, exempting them from all these taxes and levies, easing regulation, easing documentation, making things easy at the port and all these things. Because restoring confidence is also not only about security, it's also about processes of doing business. It's also about bureaucracy. It's also about institutions. It's also about the regulatory environment. So all of these things need to be dealt with to make things easy for those all these SMEs to be able to function much better. If they are doing well, the capacity for them to generate more jobs is quite huge. And if you have more people engaged, the kind of unemployment, the kind of poverty and all of that that we have around will be much less. And in the medium to long term, it is very important that we deal with our structural problems. Issues of infrastructure, issues of electricity, because these things are making it difficult for small businesses to even perform optimally. Many of them are struggling to cope, with efficiency in terms of production, with cost reduction, with competitiveness, because of all of these structural problems. So those ones, they can't solve those ones immediately. Attract investment to those areas so that you have an economy that is much more efficient in terms of production, in terms of also diversification. Because if you don't fix the structural issues, you'll be struggling with production. And without production, it's very difficult for you to actually mobilize the economy properly and get people engaged.
Well, Doctor, the impact you've talked about, there is a learning point, therefore, that there's a strong nexus between socio-political developments and the economy. For you, what is the major learning point, one or two, from this whole development?
The learning point is that if you are talking to the authorities about creating an enabling environment, the tendency on the part of many of the operatives in the public sector is to think that we are demanding for this from a selfish point of view. They feel that sometimes it's because you want to make more money. That is why you're asking for concession, reduction in tax, ease of doing business, and all of that. So they should realize that the progress of this economy is dependent on the prosperity of businesses. Because the president is talking about taking is it 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. He can't do it all by himself. The government cannot deliver it. It is business that will deliver it. And if you have a situation where businesses are having problems, either with customs, with the ports, the tax authorities, with the security agencies on the road, with all these issues, it will be difficult to achieve that objective. So there's a strong nexus between investment performance and social stability. So that message has to be driven home. And that is one learning point which I hope our public sector policymakers will take away. And in getting the environment to be more conducive for investment, there should be better engagement with stakeholders who are in the investing community. Challenges are. And when you are able to fix that, not necessarily that, it's not in all cases that government will lose money by making the environment better. Because when we complain about business environment issues, it's not all about taxes. It's about so many issues that businesses are facing. So if there are regular engagements between the stakeholders and the policymakers, between the stakeholders and the regulators, we can quickly fix a lot of these things. And some of these things are not difficult to fix. Some of them are just a question of adjusting policies or adjusting regulations. So these are the things that I think we need to do so that we can, build an economy that is inclusive. Because the beauty of an economy is it's economic inclusion. And the way to build an economy that is inclusive is to make sure that a lot more people are involved, a lot more people are employed, is to strengthen the MSME base. If you have a very strong MSME sector, you are likely to have an economy that is much more inclusive. And when the economy is much more inclusive, then you are likely to have less security problems, less problem with unemployment, and you are likely to have much better social stability. So these are the things, these are the relationships I think we need to emphasize.
Important. Very important. And Dr. Mudashiru Yusuf, just 1 minute. What do you have to say about this as it relates to our Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement? Does this in any way affect our ability to compete? And are there things that the Ministry of Industries, Trade and Investment should review? This is a ministry that will be very critical in this period.
Well, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is medium to long term in a way. What we are dealing with here right now are some immediate and short-term issues. And if we're able to deal with them, I think the issue of African Continental Free Trade area may not be significantly impacted by this. What can impact that are the other issues, other fundamental issues relating to competitiveness. And these issues were not the creation of this crisis. We are talking about issues of electricity. We are talking about issues of the ports. We are talking about issues of logistics. We are talking about issues of funding. These are issues that have been there even before this protest. So those are the fundamental issues that we need to deal with, when we talk about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement or anything at all about economic integration. Because the way to benefit from economic integration is for you to be competitive, especially in production. If you are not competitive, there's no way you can get serious value from international trade. International trade is about competitiveness. So we need to deal with the competitiveness issues. And those are much more fundamental than the issue of all this plundering and looting and all of that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mudashiru Yusuf. Very nice having you to discuss the impact of the October 2020 violence that erupted from Lagos to other parts of the country on the Nigerian business environment and economy. A major takeaway is that the social stability is a strong nexus between that and investment performance in the country. And of course, strengthening our micro, small, and medium enterprises are key areas of driving an inclusive economy, which every stakeholder in Nigeria desires, and which is also vital to that dream of lifting 100 million people from poverty in the next decade. Thank you once again for your insights, Dr. Mudashiru Yusuf, Director-General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We hope to have you in subsequent editions of this program.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. That will be all for the Economy and Politics show this morning, Tuesday, October 27, 2020. You can join our website, www.prochange.com, to watch our videos, read our news reports, and additional stories around the business environment and the economy as it's responding to the impact of the carnage that occurred last week. Also, you can join Dr. Mudashiru Yusuf at Mudashiru/Yusuf on Twitter, and there you get further updates on what's happening. And of course, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry at Lagos Chamber 88 to see what's happening in their business space. Just note that by 10 a.m. we have the market review, where we bring you developments in the fixed income and bonds market. Let's make this happen again tomorrow, same time, 9 a.m. to come your way again. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.